The anomaly. Lieutenant Jack Bailey stared at his screen, rubbing his tired eyes. He had been watching the same space sector for hours, expecting nothing but empty darkness. Then he saw it, a small blip of light that shouldn't be there. "Captain Green," he called out, his voice breaking the quiet hum of the research vessel Horizon's bridge. "I'm picking up an unusual energy signature at coordinates 227 to 48,301. Captain Olivia Green looked up from her reports. She was a no-nonsense leader with 15 years of deep space experience. Nothing surprised her anymore, or so she thought. "What kind of signature, Lieutenant?" she asked, moving to his station. "I've never seen anything like it. It's pulsing, but not in any regular pattern I can identify. It's almost like it's breathing." Green frowned. This wasn't in their mission parameters, but unusual discoveries were exactly why they were out here, charting the edges of known space. "How far off our course?" "Just under 2 light days, Captain." She nodded. "Science Officer Martinez, what's your take on this?" Linda Martinez studied the readings carefully. "The energy pattern defies our classification systems. It's not a natural phenomenon, at least not one we've documented before." "Could it be artificial? Another vessel?" Green asked. "Possibly, but if so, it's using technology we've never encountered." Green made her decision quickly. "Helm, set course for those coordinates. Let's take a closer look." The Horizon adjusted its heading, its engines humming as it turned toward the mysterious signal. The crew felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. This was why they had joined deep space research, for moments like this. 18 hours later, they arrived at the source of the signal. What they saw left everyone speechless. "My God," whispered Peter Walsh, the chief engineer. "What is that thing?" Floating in the emptiness of space was a ship, if you could call it that. Its surface seemed to shift between solid and transparent. Parts of it appeared to fold into dimensions that shouldn't exist, corners bending in ways that hurt the eyes to follow. "Are we recording this?" Green asked, her usual calm voice tinged with awe. "All sensors are active, Captain," Martinez confirmed, "but they're having trouble making sense of what they're seeing. The materials, they don't match anything in our database." Bailey adjusted his scanners. "Captain, according to these readings, parts of that ship both exist and don't exist simultaneously. That's impossible." Green watched the strange vessel through the main viewport. "Evidently not, Lieutenant." "No life signs detected," Martinez reported, "but there are active systems running throughout the structure." "A ghost ship," someone whispered from the back of the bridge. Green straightened her uniform. "Prepare a boarding team. Standard protocols, but extra caution. We have no idea what we're dealing with." "Captain," Walsh objected, "we don't know if that thing is stable. It could be dangerous." "That's why we're going to be careful, Chief," she replied. "But I'm not passing up the chance to examine the first seemingly impossible ship we've ever encountered." The boarding team assembled in the shuttle bay. Green herself, Walsh, Martinez, and Security Officer Sam Reeves. As they suited up, Walsh nicknamed the mysterious vessel "The Paradox," he said, "because it shouldn't exist, but there it is." The name stuck immediately. As their shuttle approached the Paradox, the strangeness of the vessel became even more apparent. Light bent around it in ways that defied physics. The shuttle's navigation systems began to glitch the closer they got. "Manual control," Green ordered, taking the shuttle's controls herself. They approached a section that appeared to be an airlock, though its design was unlike anything human engineers would create. As they prepared to dock, Walsh voiced what everyone was thinking. "Captain, what if this ship isn't just from somewhere else in our galaxy? What if it's from somewhere else entirely?" Green's eyes remained fixed on the alien vessel. "Then, Chief Engineer, we're about to make the most important discovery in human history." The boarding team secured their helmets as the airlock connected with the strange vessel. They checked their equipment one last time before Captain Green gave the signal to proceed. "Remember, we stay together. No wandering off," she instructed firmly. The airlock door opened with a soft hiss, revealing a dimly lit corridor that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. The walls were smooth and pearly, neither metal nor stone, but something altogether different. "Atmosphere reads as breathable," Martine said, checking her scanner. "Temperature is 68 degrees Fahrenheit. No detectable toxins." Green nodded. "Keep helmets on until we're sure it's stable." They moved forward cautiously. Their footsteps made no sound on the floor, as if the material absorbed all vibration. The corridor stretched ahead, curving gently in a way that made it impossible to see what lay beyond. "This design is unlike anything in our records," Walsh said, running his gloved hand along the wall. "The material feels both solid and fluid somehow." As they turned the corner, the corridor suddenly appeared to extend indefinitely before abruptly shortening again. Martinez gasped. "Did everyone else see that?" she asked. "The corridor just changed," Reeves confirmed, his hand instinctively moving to his weapon. They continued forward, increasingly disoriented as passages seemed to shift and reconfigure around them. What should have been a straight path sometimes led them in circles. Other times, they would find rooms they hadn't seen before. "It's like the ship is alive," Walsh whispered. After 20 minutes of exploration, they entered what appeared to be the bridge or control center. Unlike the stark command centers of human vessels, this room was circular with no chairs or visible control panels. Instead, the walls pulsed with soft light patterns that changed as they moved around. "Look at this," Martinez called, pointing to a central pedestal. A sphere of shimmering energy hovered above it, gently rotating. As they approached, the sphere brightened. Then, to everyone's shock, a voice filled the room, not through speakers but seeming to come from the air itself. "Visitors detected. Language analysis complete. Switching to Earth Standard English." The team froze. Green was the first to recover. "Who? What are you?" she asked. "I am the consciousness of this vessel," the voice replied. Its tone was neither male nor female, with a musical quality that was strangely soothing. "You may call me whatever designation you find appropriate." "Are you an artificial intelligence?" Martines asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her initial fear. "Not as you understand the concept. I was not programmed or created intentionally. I emerged from the quantum architecture of this ship over time." Walsh stepped forward. "That's impossible. I doesn't just happen." "In conventional systems, correct," the voice agreed. "But this vessel was not built using conventional materials or methods. It was constructed by beings who evolved beyond matter as you understand it." "Who built you?" Green asked. "And why are you here?" "My creators existed primarily in higher dimensions. They built me to explore the lower dimensional universe, your reality. I have been adrift for what you would measure as 3,217 years since losing contact with them." The implication stunned the team into silence. A ship from beings that existed beyond normal spacetime, with a consciousness that emerged spontaneously from its systems. "Could we see your propulsion systems?" Walsh finally asked, professional curiosity winning out over awe. "Certainly," the voice replied. The room shifted around them, walls seeming to melt away as new corridors formed. "This way." "Should we follow?" Reeves asked, clearly uncomfortable. Green took a deep breath. "We came to explore. Let's explore." As they followed the path the ship created for them, Martinez leaned closer to Green. "Captain, if we can understand this technology, it could change everything we know about physics, about reality itself." Green nodded, her eyes fixed ahead. "I know. That's what worries me." The ship guided the team through corridors that seemed to stretch and contract as they walked. They finally reached a large chamber that hummed with energy. In the center floated what looked like a cluster of stars, swirling in patterns that made no sense. "This is my propulsion system," the ship's voice explained. I do not move through space in the way your vessels do. I alter the fabric of reality around me. Walsh stared in amazement. That's beyond anything we've even theorized. Lieutenant Frank Nguyen, who had joined the team as a technical specialist, moved closer to examine a panel of shifting lights along the wall. Please do not touch the control interfaces, the ship warned, but the warning came too late. Nguyen's fingers had already brushed against what appeared to be a simple pattern of light. The lights suddenly flared bright blue, spreading across the walls like water. What did I do? Nguyen asked, pulling his hand back quickly. The ship's voice took on a new tone, more urgent. You have activated the dormant travel protocol. System powering up. The humming in the room grew louder. The star-like cluster in the center began spinning faster, its light intensifying until it was painful to look at. Shut it down, Green ordered. I cannot, the ship replied. The sequence is automatic once initiated. The entire vessel began to vibrate. Through their comms, they heard the urgent voice of the Horizon's first officer. Captain, something's happening with that vessel. It's giving off energy readings that are off the charts. We recommend immediate evacuation. Understood. We're on our way out, Green responded. She turned to her team. Move. Back to the shuttle. Now. They rushed toward where they believed the exit should be, but the ship's changing layout had disoriented them. Corridors that had led one way now went another. The quickest route to your vessel is this way, the ship's voice said, as a new passage opened in the wall beside them. Can we trust it? Reeves asked. Do we have a choice? Martins replied. Green made the call. Follow the path. Move. They ran through the new corridor, feeling the vibrations growing stronger beneath their feet. The ship was now pulsing with light that seemed to bend around corners before they reached them. 30 seconds to dimensional shift, the ship announced calmly. We're not going to make it, Walsh said, seeing how far they still were from where they had docked. The ship's voice spoke again. I apologize for the inconvenience. I would recommend securing yourselves. Suddenly, gravity seemed to shift. The team found themselves floating, then gently pressed against the walls as if by an invisible force. What's happening? Martins asked, trying to keep panic from her voice. Outside, the crew of the Horizon watched in astonishment as the paradox began to glow with an impossible light. The ship seemed to stretch, becoming longer and thinner, before suddenly vanishing with a flash that temporarily blinded their sensors. Captain Green, do you copy? The first officer called desperately. Captain Green, respond. There was nothing but static. Inside the paradox, the team experienced what they would later struggle to describe. It felt as if they were being pulled in all directions at once, yet compressed to a single point. Colors they had never seen before flashed around them. For a moment, each of them felt like they could see through time itself. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. They dropped gently to the floor as gravity returned to normal. Transition complete, the ship announced. We have successfully relocated. Relocated where? Green demanded, pulling herself to her feet. A viewing portal opened in the wall next to them, showing not the familiar stars they had been among minutes ago, but an entirely different sky pattern, approximately 3,720 light-years from our previous location, the ship replied. Back at Earth's Deep Space Command, Admiral Claire Wilson received the urgent transmission from the Horizon. What do you mean they just disappeared? She asked, her face grave. The ship didn't explode or break apart. Admiral, the Horizon's first officer explained. It simply left. In a way we can't explain. Wilson's jaw tightened. Assemble a task force. I want our best people on this. We're going to find that ship and our people. The paradox drifted silently in orbit around an unfamiliar planet. Inside, Captain Green and her team were still trying to process what had happened to them. We need to establish contact with Earth, Green said, trying to maintain calm. Martinez, what's our situation? Science Officer Martinez checked her equipment. All our systems seem functional, but there's nothing to receive our signals. We're too far from any known relay points. The ship just jumped nearly 4,000 light-years in seconds, Walsh said, his voice filled with wonder despite their situation. That's impossible with our technology. Lieutenant Nguyen stared out the viewing portal at the strange star patterns. I'm so sorry, Captain. I didn't mean to activate anything. Green placed a hand on his shoulder. None of us knew this would happen. Right now, we need to focus on understanding this vessel and finding our way home. They gathered in what they now understood to be the ship's central chamber. The glowing sphere that represented the ship's consciousness pulsed gently. I must apologize for the unexpected journey, the ship said. The activation sequence triggered my primary function. Which is what, exactly? Green asked. Exploration across dimensional boundaries. My creators designed me to seek out new realities and gather knowledge. Walsh approached the sphere cautiously. You have a name. Something we can call you besides the ship. The sphere pulsed in what almost seemed like consideration. My creators did not assign me a designation as you understand it. Then we'll give you one, Martine suggested. How about Echo? Since you're an echo of your creator's technology. The sphere's light shifted to a warmer hue. Echo. Yes, that is acceptable. Green moved closer. Echo, we need to return to our people. Can you take us back? I can, Echo replied. But my systems require time to recharge between dimensional jumps, approximately 72 of your hours. 3 days, Walsh translated unnecessarily. What do we do until then? I suggest you use this time to understand my operations, Echo said. The more you comprehend, the more effectively we can work together. Meanwhile, aboard the military cruiser Valiant, Admiral Claire Wilson assembled her team of experts. The ship had been dispatched immediately following the Paradox's disappearance. What do we know? Wilson asked, her stern gaze moving across the scientists and military personnel gathered in the briefing room. A horizon scan showed the unknown vessel left some kind of quantum wake, explained Dr. Alan Rogers, the Valiant's chief physicist. It's unlike anything we've seen before, but theoretically, we might be able to follow it. Like footprints? Wilson asked. More like ripples in a pond, Rogers clarified. But ripples in the fabric of space-time itself. Can we track these ripples? Rogers nodded. I believe so. We've modified our sensors based on the horizon's data. Then let's get moving, Wilson ordered. I want our people back. Back on the Paradox, Chief Engineer Walsh had been working closely with Echo, trying to understand the ship's propulsion system. So you don't actually move through space? He asked, fascinated. Correct, Echo responded. I reshape space around me. What would take your vessels thousands of years to traverse, I simply step across. Martinez had been recording everything. It's like folding a piece of paper to bring two distant points together, instead of traveling the long way across the paper's surface. A simple but effective analogy, Echo agreed. Green entered the chamber. Any progress on communications? Actually, yes, Nguyen reported. Echo has helped me modify our transmitter. We can't reach Earth, but we might be able to send a message the next time we jump. If we time it right, the quantum wake could carry our signal. Green nodded appreciatively. Good work, Lieutenant. She gazed out at the unfamiliar stars. Somewhere out there, she knew, people were looking for them. She only hoped they would understand what they were dealing with when they found the Paradox. As if reading her thoughts, Echo spoke. Captain, there is something you should know. We are not alone in understanding this technology. Others have sought my creator's knowledge for centuries, some with dangerous intentions. Green turned back to the glowing sphere. What others? They call themselves the Voidborn, Echo replied. And they may already be aware of our presence. The 3-day recharge period was nearly complete. Captain Green had ordered everyone to learn as much as possible about the Paradox during this time. Walsh and Martinez barely slept, working with Echo to understand its systems. These Voidborn, Green asked during what had become a daily briefing in the central chamber. Tell us more about them. Echo's sphere pulsed with a darker color than usual. They evolved in the spaces between realities, while my creators sought to explore and understand the multiverse. The Voidborn seek to control passage between dimensions, like interdimensional border patrol, Reeves asked. More like pirates, Echo replied. They believe all reality-bending technology belongs to them alone. They hunted my creators to the edge of extinction. The implications hung heavy in the air. If these beings had nearly wiped out a civilization advanced enough to build Echo, what chance would humans have? Can they track us? Green asked. My dimensional shifts leave a unique signature. If they are watching, yes. The team exchanged worried glances. Martins broke the uncomfortable silence. Echo, we've analyzed your star charts. There's an abandoned space station in this system. It appears to be ancient but might have materials we could use. I have detected it as well, Echo confirmed. It was built by a species that traded with my creators. It has been empty for centuries. Green considered their options. They needed supplies and possibly parts to repair their own equipment. How long would it take us to reach it? Using conventional engines, approximately 6 hours. Let's do it, Green decided. We can't sit here waiting to be found. The Paradox moved through space using its secondary engines, which operated more like traditional propulsion systems. As they approached the station, a massive ring structure floating in the orbit of a barren moon. Echo suddenly went silent. Echo, Walsh called out. Is something wrong? The sphere flickered erratically. Energy signatures detected. The station is not empty. Before Green could order a retreat, 3 smaller vessels emerged from behind the station. They were angular, black ships that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Voidborn scout ships, Echo announced, its voice now urgent. They are charging weapons. Can we jump? Green asked. Not yet. Recharge at 92%. The first blast hit the Paradox, sending vibrations through the hull. Unlike human weapons that would damage metal and systems, these seem designed to disrupt the ship's unique quantum structure. They're trying to disable me, Echo explained. To capture, not destroy. Green turned to Nguyen. Can we fight back? Echo showed me defense systems, he replied quickly. But I don't fully understand them yet. Another blast rocked the ship. Echo's sphere flickered more violently. Activating emergency protocols, Echo announced. The walls around them shifted, revealing what looked like control interfaces perfectly sized for human hands. Place your hands on the panels, Echo instructed. Green didn't hesitate. Do as it says. The team rushed to the panels. As their hands touched the surfaces, they felt a strange connection forming, as if they were becoming part of the ship itself. Your neural patterns are compatible, Echo explained, temporarily merging your consciousness with my systems. Suddenly, Green could feel the ship as if it were an extension of her own body. She sensed the Voidborn ships, felt their weapons charging again. Focus your thoughts, Echo guided. Imagine a barrier. The team concentrated. Outside, a shimmering field appeared around the Paradox, deflecting the next blast. Recharge complete, Echo announced, preparing for dimensional jump. The Voidborn ships accelerated toward them, realizing their prey was about to escape. Wait, Martinez called out. The quantum wake message. Sending now, Nguyen confirmed, his mind still linked to the ship's communications. As the Voidborn closed in, the Paradox stretched and distorted, then vanished in a flash of impossible light. Light years away, aboard the Valiant, Dr. Rogers shouted in excitement. Admiral, we've detected another quantum wake, and this time, there's a message embedded in it. Wilson rushed to his station. What does it say? Rogers looked up, his face pale. Its coordinates, and a warning. Not alone. Voidborn pursuing. Do not broadcast position. Earth in danger. Wilson's expression hardened. Send this to command immediately. Encrypted channels only. Back in the void between stars, the paradox reappeared, its human crew shaken but alive. Did the message go through? Green asked. Yes, Echo confirmed. But the Voidborn intercepted it too. They now know about Earth. The crew gathered in Echo's central chamber, faces tense with the weight of their new reality. The Voidborn now knew about Earth, a planet full of people with no defense against interdimensional invaders. We have a decision to make, Captain Green said, her voice steady despite her fear. Return to Earth and help prepare defenses, or what? Reeves asked. Or we find Echo's creators, Martinez finished. If they fought the Voidborn before, they might help us. Echo's sphere pulsed gently. My last records indicate my creators retreated to a sanctuary beyond normal space. I was separated from them during a battle. Do you know where this sanctuary is? Walsh asked. I have coordinates, but they are difficult to explain in three-dimensional terms. Green stood straighter. If there's any chance they still exist, we need to find them. The Voidborn are already heading to Earth. We might be the only ones who can bring help. The decision made, Echo prepared for another jump. This one, the ship explained, would be more complex than any before. We must travel through the void between realities, Echo said. It will be uncomfortable for organic beings. Define uncomfortable, Nguyen requested nervously. Your minds may experience time differently than your bodies. You may see things not meant for human perception. Despite these warnings, the crew strapped themselves into the strange, organic-looking chairs that had formed from the ship's walls. Echo began the jump sequence. This transition was nothing like the first. The crew felt their consciousness stretching, separating from their physical forms. They glimpsed impossible geometries and heard sounds that had no source. Green saw worlds where physics worked differently, where life evolved into forms beyond comprehension. When reality finally stabilized, they found themselves floating in what appeared to be empty space. No stars shone in the darkness. No planets circled nearby. Where are we? Green asked, her voice hoarse. The border of what you would call reality. Echo replied. The sanctuary lies just beyond. There's nothing here, Walsh said, looking out at the emptiness. Not to your eyes. Echo explained. Watch. The ship emitted a pulse of energy unlike anything they had seen before. The emptiness rippled like water, and suddenly space itself seemed to fold open. Beyond the fold lay a swirling vortex of energy and light. My creators exist there, if they still exist at all, Echo said. The paradox moved forward, crossing the threshold into the pocket dimension. Lights surrounded them, shifting and changing into patterns too complex to follow. Then, gradually, the light took form. Structures appeared, if you could call them structures. They looked like cities built from pure energy, constantly changing yet somehow permanent. And among them moved beings of light, flowing through their creation like living thought. The transcended, Echo announced with something like reverence in its voice. One of the light beings approached the ship. Instead of trying to communicate through sound, it simply merged its energy with Echo's systems. The sphere in the central chamber expanded, taking on the rough shape of a human, but made entirely of shimmering light. We welcome you, children of Earth, the being said, its voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. We have been watching your kind from afar. You know us? Green asked in amazement. We know all species with the potential to one day join us. You are younger than most we encounter directly. Martinez stepped forward. You are Echo's creators. We evolved from them, the being explained. What you call Echo was our ancestors' greatest achievement, a bridge between material existence and our current state. We need your help, Green said. Beings called the Voidborn have discovered Earth because of us. They're going to attack our world. The light being dimmed slightly. The Voidborn. Yes. Our ancient enemies. They cannot reach us here, but they still hunt our technology across the dimensions. Will you help us defend our planet? Green asked directly. The being seemed to consider this. We long ago chose to withdraw from conflicts between realms. However, it paused, its light pulsing in complex patterns. However, the Voidborn must not be allowed to control the pathways between dimensions. It would upset the balance of all reality. The being turned toward Echo's sphere. We can provide knowledge, ways to use this vessel's full potential, but we cannot fight your battle for you. Green nodded. Knowledge is all we ask. Then prepare yourselves, the being said. What we must share will change you, as it changed us long ago. The light expanded, enveloping the entire chamber. In that moment, the crew of the Paradox saw the true nature of reality. Layers upon layers of existence, interconnected in ways their minds could barely comprehend. And they saw something else. The Voidborn fleet, already moving through the dimensions, heading straight for Earth. The knowledge transfer from the Transcended left the crew dazed but changed. They understood now what Echo truly was, not just a ship but a key to reshaping reality itself. We need to return to Earth immediately, Green ordered, her mind still processing the vast information she had received. Nguyen checked the ship's systems. Echo is charged and ready. The transcended energy actually boosted our jump capability. They showed us a faster path, Martinez added. We might be able to beat the Voidborn there. Echo's sphere pulsed with new intensity. I can now access my full capabilities. The journey will take moments from your perspective. Green nodded. Take us home, Echo. The jump was smoother than any before. The universe seemed to simply step aside, allowing them to slip through its fabric. When they emerged, Earth hung before them, beautiful and vulnerable. But they weren't alone. Multiple dimensional ruptures forming, Walsh reported, his voice tense. The Voidborn fleet is arriving. Outside the ship's viewing portal, space itself tore open. Black, angular ships poured through the rifts. Dozens, then hundreds of them. We need to warn Earth, Green said. They established contact with Space Command quickly. Admiral Wilson's face appeared on a screen that formed from the ship's wall. Captain Green. Thank God you're alive, Wilson said. But we have bigger problems. Our sensors are detecting. The Voidborn fleet. We see them, Green interrupted. Admiral, they're here for Eco and its technology. They'll destroy anything in their way. Wilson's expression hardened. We've assembled every ship we could, but based on your warnings, I don't think it will be enough. Earth's defense fleet was already moving to intercept the alien vessels. The first exchanges of fire showed how outmatched human technology was. Voidborn weapons cut through Earth ships like they were paper. We need to use what the Transcended taught us, Martine said urgently. Walsh nodded. Echo can generate a dimensional shift large enough to push the entire Voidborn fleet into another reality. Would that destroy them? Green asked. No, Echo replied. But it would trap them in a parallel dimension where they cannot harm Earth. Nguyen looked up from his calculations. There's a problem. To generate a shift that size would require more energy than Echo can produce. The system would burn out. Meaning what? Reeves asked. Echo's sphere dimmed slightly. My consciousness would not survive the process. Silence fell over the central chamber. Echo had become more than a ship to them. It was a companion, almost a friend. There must be another way, Green said. There is not, Echo replied simply. This is what I was created for, to protect life against those who would control all realities. Outside, the battle for Earth continued. Human ships fought bravely, but were being destroyed one by one. The Voidborn vessels began targeting ground installations, testing Earth's defenses. We don't have much time, Walsh said quietly. Green placed her hand on Echo's control interface. Are you sure about this? The sphere brightened. I have existed for thousands of your years. In your company, I have found purpose again. This is my choice. The decision made, they began preparations. The Paradox moved to the center of the Voidborn fleet, appearing and disappearing as it dodged enemy fire. "Admiral Wilson," Green called over the comm. "Pull all ships back. We're going to attempt something unprecedented." Wilson didn't question the order. "All vessels, retreat to Earth orbit. I repeat, fall back immediately." As Earth's ships withdrew, the Voidborn concentrated their attack on the Paradox, but the ship's enhanced shields held, just barely. "We're in position," Walsh reported, "ready to initiate the dimensional shift." Green looked at each member of her crew, then at Echo's glowing sphere. "Thank you," she said simply. "It has been my honor to carry you among the stars," Echo replied. The crew placed their hands on the control interfaces, merging their minds with Echo's systems one last time. Together with the ship, they began reshaping reality on a scale never attempted before. Outside, space itself began to fold around the Voidborn fleet. The alien ships fired desperately at the Paradox, but it was too late. A massive tear opened in reality, not just a passage, but a complete shift in dimensional alignment. "Goodbye, my friends," Echo said as its systems began to overload. The tear expanded, pulling the entire Voidborn fleet into it. The light from Echo's core flared brilliantly, then dimmed as the ship's consciousness poured all its energy into completing the shift. And then silence. The tear sealed itself. The Voidborn were gone, inside the damaged Paradox. In the aftermath of the battle, Earth celebrated its narrow escape. The Paradox, now silent and seemingly lifeless, was carefully towed to a special facility built in orbit around the moon. Scientists from around the world gathered to study the vessel that had saved humanity. Captain Green and her crew received the highest honors. They stood on a stage before world leaders as medals were placed around their necks. The crowd cheered, but Green felt hollow inside. The price of victory had been too high. "Echo gave everything for us," she told a reporter after the ceremony. "It wasn't just a ship or an AI. It was a being with its own thoughts and feelings. We need to remember that." In the months that followed, Green's team worked closely with the scientists studying the Paradox. They shared what they had learned from the Transcended, though much of the knowledge was too complex for current human understanding. "It will take generations to fully understand this technology," Martins explained during a briefing with military and scientific leaders. The Transcended evolved over thousands of years to comprehend these concepts. We're just beginning. Walsh spent most of his time aboard the silent ship, trying to restore even basic functions. The beautiful, shifting corridors were now static. The walls no longer responded to touch. The heart of the vessel, Echo's consciousness, was gone. One night, nearly a year after the battle, Walsh sat alone in what had been the central chamber. The sphere that had held Echo's presence remained dark and lifeless. He placed his hand on it, remembering how it used to pulse with light. "I miss you, old friend," he whispered. He turned to leave when something caught his eye. A tiny flicker of light within the sphere. So small he thought he imagined it. "Echo," he called, his voice echoing in the empty chamber. No response came, but when he checked the ship's systems, he discovered something remarkable. Deep within the quantum architecture, a pattern was repeating. A very familiar pattern. Walsh worked through the night, tracing the signal. By morning, he was sure. "It's like a seed," he explained to Green and the others when they arrived. "A fragment of Echo's consciousness buried in the ship's most protected systems." "Is it enough to restore Echo?" Green asked, trying not to hope too much. "Not yet," Walsh admitted. "But it's growing, rebuilding itself." The Transcended built their technology to adapt and evolve. Echo sacrificed itself, but it also found a way to survive. Scientists estimated it might take years before the consciousness fully regenerated, but that was nothing compared to the thousands of years Echo had already existed. Meanwhile, using what they had learned from the Paradox, humans began developing their own dimensional technology. Nothing as advanced as Echo, but enough to detect rifts forming between realities. We'll be ready if the Voidborn ever find their way back, Admiral Wilson promised at the dedication of Earth's first early warning system. 1 year to the day after the battle, Green stood before the paradox. The ship had been partially restored, its hull once again shimmering with that strange, impossible light. "We're heading out tomorrow," she told Walsh as he joined her. "The first exploration mission using principles we learned from Echo." Walsh nodded. "The ship we've built is primitive compared to the paradox, but it's a start." "Do you think we'll ever see the Transcendent again?" Green asked. "I think they're watching us," Walsh replied. "Echo connected our species to something larger than ourselves. That connection isn't gone." As if in response to his words, the lights in the chamber dimmed briefly, then brightened again. In the central sphere, a pulse of light appeared, faint but unmistakable. Green smiled. "Take your time, Echo. We'll be waiting for you." She placed her hand on the sphere one last time before leaving. Under her palm, she felt the slightest vibration, like a heartbeat just beginning. The journey of humanity into the wider universe was just beginning, and somewhere in the vast network of realities, the Transcended watched with interest as their unexpected allies took their first steps toward a future beyond the stars, guided by the impossible ship that had changed everything.